What if everything you've been imagining is already on its way right now? What if the reason things feel quiet, uncertain, or delayed is not a sign of failure, but evidence that everything is unfolding exactly as it should? You're not waiting for life to begin. It's already happening. Right now, quietly, perfectly, invisibly. Neville Goddard often reminded us that imagination is not a passive tool. It is the engine of reality. Your inner world is not just a place of fantasy. It is the workshop where real things are built. If you've been feeling like nothing is changing, this video will show you the exact reason why that's a lie your senses are telling you. It's already changing. The momentum is already moving. This isn't about wishful thinking or blind hope. It's about understanding the deeper mechanics of manifestation. Today you'll discover why your assumption has already set the wheels in motion. Even if the outer world seems silent, you'll learn why the delay you think you're experiencing is actually proof that the bridge of incidents has already begun. And more importantly, you'll see why your role now is not to struggle, but to trust. This message is not about waiting for the future. It's about recognizing what's unfolding today in this very moment. So many people give up just before the breakthrough because they misinterpret silence for stagnation. But Neville revealed something powerful. The moment you assume a new state, the world begins to reorganize around that assumption. There is no need for force. The work is already done. So if you've been imagining success, healing, love, abundance, anything at all, and it feels like it hasn't arrived yet, stay with this video. There's something vital you need to understand. You'll hear why your assumptions are not only working, but why they are the only thing that ever truly does. We'll uncover the subtle shifts that happen behind the scenes. We'll expose the inner conversation that quietly shapes every result. And you'll leave with the certainty that you are not just hoping for change. You've already caused it. Because in the world of Neville Goddard, the question is never will it happen, it's only have you assumed it to be. This video will walk you through the signs that it's finally happening, and why your current experience is proof, not delay. You'll understand how to stop doubting the silence, how to recognize the bridge of incidents, and how to stay grounded in the inner identity that is creating your world from the inside out. This is the kind of message that changes everything, not because it's loud, but because it's quietly true. So don't click away. What you're about to hear might be the final reminder your heart has been waiting for. The pieces are already falling into place. Welcome to Ignis Mindset. If you're ready to live in your assumption, see your reality transform, and trust your inner power, make sure to subscribe. Let's begin. Before we talk about the harvest, let's return to the seed. According to Neville Goddard, the moment you imagine a thing, you have planted its seed. This is not symbolic. It is literal in the dimension of consciousness. The imagination acts as the soil, the assumption is the seed, and the feeling is the water that gives it life. Every single thing you assume with conviction begins to germinate, even when the surface of life appears unchanged. This is where most people falter. They watch the ground, waiting for proof. But like any real seed, the first signs are not visible to the eye. Roots must grow underground before the plant breaks the surface. The law of assumption doesn't operate by our calendar or need for control. It functions perfectly on its own laws, governed by the invisible intelligence within consciousness. So when you feel like nothing is happening, Neville would tell you something is absolutely happening, just not yet on the level you can see. There's a hidden wisdom in nature that mirrors this process. An acorn doesn't scream into an oak tree. It simply becomes. In the same way, your desire doesn't need to be shouted into the world. You only need to plant it through imagination, feel the reality of its presence, and allow it to take root. The outer world is the final echo, not the starting point. Imagination, for Neville, was not a daydream. It was the only creative power. He said, imagination is the beginning of all creation. That means if you imagined wealth, the wealth has begun. If you imagined love, the love has started moving. If you imagined peace, healing, success, anything at all, then the work has already commenced. even if your senses tell you otherwise. And this brings us to something even deeper, the inner conversation. Neville Goddard emphasized that our persistent mental dialogue, the invisible script running inside us, is not just commentary, it is causation. The world outside is mirroring the world within, not occasionally, but continuously. He stated it plainly. Your inner talking mirrors your world. That means if you've been walking around silently rehearsing confidence, success, joy, acceptance, those inner words are building a world you haven't walked into yet. If your inner world has been filled with assurance, then the external world is catching up. It's not magic, it's law. Let's pause and reflect on something profound. Most people don't realize they've already shifted their world because they expect the shift to look like fireworks. But that's not how assumption works. Assumption changes the cause, not the symptom. And by the time the symptoms arise, the cause is already old. That's why Neville often referred to life as a delayed echo. Your current experience is not a live broadcast, it's a playback of yesterday's inner talk. So when things begin to happen, suddenly, what you're really seeing is the culmination of what you planted long ago, what you felt to be true in quiet moments, what you assumed without needing applause, what you claimed in private. Those inner assumptions, those quiet rehearsals of being the person you've decided to be. They are not wasted, they are stored, they are planted, and eventually they sprout into the people, opportunities and moments that seem to come out of nowhere. But they didn't come from nowhere, they came from you. Neville taught that your imagination, when felt as real, becomes the bridge of incidents. So the more you felt that new version of yourself, the one who is free, certain, empowered, the more your world bends to reflect that feeling. The shift was never external first. The inner man must change. And once he does, the outer man begins to walk through the landscape shaped by that change. It's vital then to not be fooled by appearances. When you think it's finally happening, realize this, it's not sudden. It's the harvest of long-held inner conversations. It's the result of the state you've persistently occupied, whether consciously or unconsciously. And the power is in knowing that you get to choose those states. This is not about striving harder. It's not about begging for results. It's about returning to the knowing that the seed has been planted. You don't dig up a seed to check its progress. You water it, you protect it, you expect its emergence. The feeling of waiting begins to dissolve when you understand this principle. Your role is not to control the outer world. Your role is to remain faithful to the assumption you have made. When Neville spoke of living in the end, he didn't mean future obsession. He meant now, feeling now as if it were already done. Because from the perspective of consciousness, it is already done. The only question is whether you will stay loyal to that reality long enough for it to bear fruit. That's the test. Not time, not effort, not work, but loyalty. Loyalty to the assumption. Loyalty to the inner state. Loyalty to the vision that is more real than the facts your senses report. So if you feel things beginning to shift, if strange coincidences are forming, if people start treating you differently, or you find unexpected peace, know that these are signs of the harvest. You didn't force this, you assumed it. And assumption is creation. The root system has been growing for longer than you know. The change you're witnessing now is just the visible crown of something deeper, older, and profoundly personal. It is the evidence that your inner talking has been doing its perfect work. And the most powerful part of all of this, it didn't require anyone else. No permission, no validation, no external sign, just your choice to feel the wish fulfilled and to live from that place, even when it was silent, even when nothing looked different. Because Neville Goddard didn't teach people how to wish. He taught them how to be. The moment your desire begins to feel natural, you are standing at the edge of its fulfillment. Neville Goddard taught that it is not intensity or effort that causes manifestation, but the feeling of naturalness, when what you once longed for now feels normal, when imagining it no longer excites you, but simply is, you have reached the point of creation. This shift is subtle. It's not an emotional high. In fact, it's often quiet. There's no need to prove or force anything anymore. That's because your consciousness has accepted the state as reality. It doesn't question it. It doesn't search for it. It lives from it. This is what Neville referred to when he said, you must feel it to be real. But more than that, it must feel normal, like your true self. Many mistake this calm state for indifference, but it's the opposite. It's inner certainty. When you no longer obsess over whether your desire will happen, it's not because you've given up. It's because you've become the version of yourself who already has it. The need to obsess is gone because there's nothing to chase. You've assumed the end, and in Neville's teachings, assuming the end is claiming the manifestation. This detachment often frightens people, especially in a world addicted to striving. But letting go doesn't mean failure. It means alignment. You've released the desperate grasp and entered a state of trust. Surrender is not weakness. It's strength in its purest form. It says, I no longer doubt what is mine. Neville pointed to this letting go as the turning point for many. People strive and visualize and affirm, but nothing seems to change until they stop pushing, until they let go. And then something begins to move. Life shifts, not because you finally did something, but because you finally stopped resisting what was already in motion. The surrender is internal. You relax into your new identity. You accept it so deeply that your outer world has no choice but to reflect it. This is identity-based manifestation. Neville taught that the world always reflects who you believe yourself to be. Not what you want, but what you are. That's why change only comes when you change your concept of self. Change your conception of yourself and you'll change your world, Neville said. This isn't philosophy, it's instruction. It means that the world you're walking through right now is a mirror of your dominant self-image. The moment your self-concept shifts, reality begins reshaping itself to match. If you're seeing new opportunities, different conversations, or a sense of peace you didn't have before, those are not coincidences. They are reflections of your new state of being. They are the surface level proof that your inner world has changed. And while they may seem small, don't overlook them. The universe whispers before it shouts. Those subtle shifts, someone treating you with more respect, a chance encounter, a sudden idea, they're evidence, not dramatic, not always loud, but clear. This is where faith must hold steady, because the early signs are not always what you expect. They're quieter, more natural, but they are signs nonetheless. This is the most important phase, because it is where many turn back. The desire has become natural. The obsession is gone, but the outer world has only just begun to change, and so doubt tries to return. But Neville warned us here. Don't fall back into the old state. This is the test of loyalty. Can you remain faithful to the new concept of self, even when your senses still echo the past? The answer must be yes, because reality is always catching up. It lags behind consciousness. That's why feeling it real must come first. Once you've embodied the new identity, once you've walked in it mentally, emotionally, and quietly, it's only a matter of time before your world shifts accordingly. The lack of obsession is not failure. It's faith. It's knowing without needing. And that is the purest form of manifestation. When you are no longer asking when, you've stepped into now. And now is where all change begins. You may not realize it, but if you've been living in the feeling of your wish fulfilled, if it feels normal to you now, it means the change is already happening. Your new self-image is being reflected back through experiences, people, emotions. Even if it's subtle at first, the mirror is shifting. Stay steady. Keep living from the end. This isn't about controlling the outcome. It's about becoming the version of yourself for whom the outcome is already real. That's the root of Neville's entire teaching, to assume the state of the wish fulfilled and live as though it were already true, not out of hope, but out of being. Trust that what you've accepted within will soon surround you. Let it unfold without fear, because the manifestation is simply your own reflection, returning to you. The moment you assumed your desire is already fulfilled, something began moving behind the scenes. Neville Goddard referred to this movement as the bridge of incidents, a natural sequence of events, often so subtle and ordinary that most people fail to recognize it. Yet it is always there. The bridge is not something you must build. It unfolds on its own, guided by the state you have occupied within. You may think nothing is happening, but that's only because the bridge rarely announces itself. It doesn't appear magical or dramatic. It can look like delays, disappointments, reroutes, but each event, every detour, every conversation, every unexpected change is part of a perfectly ordered path leading directly to your assumed reality. What feels random is often the most precise alignment of all. Many overlook this process. They imagine that manifestation will come in a single moment, as if reality will suddenly crack open and deliver the result. But Neville made it clear, imagination plants the seed, and the bridge of incidents is how that seed grows into tangible form. That growth must follow the natural order of things, yet guided by an invisible intelligence, your own imagination. You are already on the bridge. If you have sincerely felt your desire to be real, then you are no longer at the starting point. The world has begun to rearrange itself, but you must walk the bridge with grace and awareness, not by forcing or pushing, but by trusting. Trust is what allows you to move through each day without anxiety, without impatience, knowing that every step is leading you closer, even if it doesn't look like it yet. Neville emphasized calmness in this process. He didn't teach frantic effort or constant searching. He taught stillness, a settled heart, a mind that remains loyal to the end, even in the face of appearances. That is the power of true assumption, when you can remain undisturbed by the 3D world because your inner world has already claimed the truth. The bridge is not meant to be perfect in appearance. Sometimes it feels confusing. Sometimes you'll meet resistance or unexpected setbacks. But nothing is out of order. All of it is necessary. The key is to stop reacting as though something has gone wrong. It hasn't. It's unfolding precisely as it must. Doubt and frustration only prolong the journey. They don't destroy the bridge, but they slow your steps across it. That's why living in the end is not just a visualization technique. It is a mindset. It is a commitment to remaining mentally and emotionally loyal to the reality you've chosen. No matter what the senses say, you are not here to beg the world to change. You are here to change your self-concept and allow the world to reflect it. Neville often said the outer must conform to the inner. This is not optional. It's a law. Reality bends to the identity you hold. When you persist in the inner state of fulfillment, the outer is forced to mirror it even if it resists at first. Even if it seems like nothing is moving. This is where most give up. They see delays and assume their assumption failed. But the delay is often the final adjustment before the full reflection appears. The worst thing you can do is step out of the end and return to the state of doubt. That resets the bridge. It calls back the old identity. It slows the momentum that was already in motion. You must continue to live in the assumption, even when it's hard, especially when it's hard. Yet the persistence is not about time. It's about identity. Each day you remain in the new self-concept. The faster the bridge clears and the path unfolds. And here's the secret. You don't need to know how. Neville was very clear on this. The how is not your concern. The imagination chooses the end. The bridge handles the how. And often the how is stranger than anything you could have predicted. That's why it must be left alone. Your job is not to direct the traffic of life. It is to remain in the state that draws all things toward you. Trust that even ordinary events are part of the orchestration. That chance meeting, that random delay, that sudden redirection, they're not working against you. They're drawing the invisible lines that form the image you have created within. Your assumption is already creating facts in the unseen, and the bridge is the path by which those facts become visible. When you stay in the end, you don't need reassurance from the world. You no longer check for signs or chase evidence. You know, and that knowing allows you to move through each moment with calmness and clarity. It silences the panic. It dissolves the need because you already are what you sought to become. Your faith in this stage becomes your greatest tool. Not blind belief, but deep trust in the law. The law that says, as within, so without. You do not have to wait to feel successful, loved, free, or abundant. You must feel those things now, regardless of appearances, and persist in that state. Eventually, the world gives in. It has no choice. It always yields to the persistent assumption. That's the beauty of Neville's message. You don't fight the world. You influence it silently, internally, and let the bridge do the rest. So keep walking. Even if the next step is unclear, even if the road feels slow, you are not where you started, and you are not lost. The bridge of incidents has already begun. It is already forming beneath your feet. Every moment, every encounter, every change, it's leading you to the fulfillment of what you've already claimed as yours. The final outcome is inevitable. As long as you stay in the end and refuse to fall back into doubt, the bridge will carry you through. Let the world rearrange itself. Let the delays unfold. Just remain steady in your inner knowing. Because when you no longer react to the 3D and instead respond from the fulfillment within, you speed up the unfolding. You walk in alignment, you let the outer conform, and eventually what once felt distant becomes your lived reality. Not by force, but by the quiet power of assumption. Everything that's unfolding in your life right now, whether it's a small shift or a major breakthrough, is not an accident. It's not some random alignment of events or a lucky coincidence. This is evidence, real living proof that your inner world has changed and the outer is now responding. It's the manifestation of the law in motion, exactly as Neville Goddard described. You've imagined, you persisted, you've stayed loyal to the unseen, and now the bridge of incidents is carrying you across to the very thing you once held only in your imagination. This moment, this very phase you are in, is the unfolding of what you already claimed internally. It's finally happening because you have already become the person who has it. This is not just a moment to celebrate. This is a moment to recognize your own power. You did this not through force, not through effort, but through alignment, through the quiet assumption, through the feeling that it was already done. You didn't chase it, you became it. And now life is simply echoing back what you've already accepted as true. So don't let doubt creep in now. Don't look around and question the pace or the path. This is the divine order of your own consciousness, reflected back to you. Stay in the knowing, stay in the end, because it's not just coming, it's already here. The fact that you feel this shift, this awareness, is the proof. Neville once said, dare to believe in the reality of your assumption and watch the world play its part relative to its fulfillment. That's what's happening now. The world is playing its part. Your job is simply to remain faithful to the version of you who already has it. If this message resonates with you, if something within you knows this to be true, then like this video and subscribe to Ignis Mindset. We're here to walk with you, to remind you of your power, and to bring you deeper into Neville Goddard's most profound teachings. You don't need permission. You don't need signs. You are the sign. You are the shift. And this is only the beginning.